Hey, it's Hipster GW. Welcome back to Hipster Codes. So in this video, I wanted to just talk a little bit about my current approach to making this game that I'm demonstrating here in the background. This is like 20 XP too. It makes me look like I'm actually a good game designer whenever you speed it up really fast. Like I'm actually putting a ton of thought into it. But yeah, so I'm still learning as I go. I have game dev as a hobby. If you're new to the channel, that's sort of my approach to everything. So I'm still figuring stuff out the same way that you probably are. So in this Souls-like game that I'm working on, I'm going to keep showing it off a little bit more going into the future. But I was creating my prologue sequence, which is this big map here. So I have a plugin called M4 Landscapes or something like that I want to create a video on someday to create the actual landscape. And it helped a ton by making sure that that your actual landscape materials match, basically like they match the what is it, like the angle of the actual landscape. So it's like whenever you have a steep cliff, you get that rock material, but then whenever it's flat, I'm here in the snow biome, and so it's going to be more snowy. And so that helped a ton, but it was still, whenever I created this little environment, it was still felt really empty. This is where I sort of realized that the 80-20 rule applies to so many things. So if you're familiar with the 80-20 rule, it just applies to so many things. The way that I thought about it in this process is, this is all ballparking here, so this isn't like going to be a scientific approach to it, but it really took like 20% of the time to get the landscape built, and it took about 20% of the time to sort of place the characters where they needed to be, and I'm just talking specifically for my environment design and sort of my level design here. But then that's going to get you like 20% of the benefit still. So like 80% of the benefit is going to come from all those little details. That's also going to take up 80% of your time. And so you could see there, that little area that I was in before, I wasn't really liking it. I thought it was pretty empty, and I just started adding chains. I was just randomly thinking about that one boss fight in the very beginning of the 6th level Black Myth Wukong, where you walk into it and there's just like all these chains on the walls. I assume in Black Myth Wukong, the reason that there were chains all over the ceiling or all over the cliffs made it a lot of sense. Mine, I just thought that they looked really cool. And so then here I have this little wolf boss, I have this dual wolf boss fight that is going to be at the end of my prologue chapter for the game. And so I intentionally created the little arena. I keep using the word little, but I intentionally created that circular arena where it's nice and flat and it's like a plateau. And you walk into there and then you have this boss fight arena. And I realized that adding these rocks just added a ton of detail for actually not a ton of effort. And so when I was going about adding all this environment detail, I was trying to keep the 80-20 rule in mind, where I said, okay, I'm just gonna try and do, and see, I break my own rules here, but I'm gonna try and do the big things first. So I'm gonna get those big rocks up there first, and noticing that I still have the landscape built out, and I'm still gonna honor the way that I designed the original map with the original landscape. But adding all those rocks and everything to the edge of it adds a lot of detail and makes it look, in my opinion, a lot better for a surprisingly low amount of effort. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm just adding the exact same rock over and over again, and I was surprised how much it, just doing the scaling on different axes, automatically just makes it look like you're using a different rock over and over again, but it's really just the same 2 or 3 rock groups that I have here that are just from some asset pack. You see that castle in the background? They came with that castle, and they look surprisingly good. And I used 2 or 3 of them over and over and over. And look, I'm not going to claim that I'm creating, the next Witcher game level quality content here, but for spending a couple of hours, all this sped up footage is a couple of hours of level design, just for a couple hours of work, I think it's starting to look pretty good. I do have the benefit of all these assets that I've collected. I think the specific castle was probably from one of the Humble bundles. So I'm benefiting from that. I didn't create all these on my own. Oh, you can see here I'm building the invisible wall that you can see I did this before my previous video, because my previous video I went over customizing the invisible wall, and you can see I'm running into the problem where it's just a rectangle and it's not as smooth as I want it to be. So that's funny that you can actually see my previous video helped make that invisible wall fit that path better. But yeah, you can see I'm just adding a bunch of decals here to, this is like the 20% where it's 80% of the time is going to give you like, what is it going to be? It's going to be like 80% of the time for 20% of the detail, but also it's going to be like 80% of the experience is going to be through the details. You can see I'm creating a bunch of blood here. So whenever you walk into this, I realized you want to walk up the path and you realize, holy crap, there is something dangerous going on up here. And so I add all these blood details going up to where the wolf boss fight is going to be, and you realize that you're about ready to get into some shit that you have to prepare for. So I thought that was a cool idea. And oh yeah, and then here I'm just filling in some areas where I didn't want you to be able to run off the edge of the map. So that's actually just a little empty area. But I think adding some of the rocks and some of the trees over and over again, you know, it just adds some character. The thing is that idea is for the player to run through this area, and they're hopefully not going to give too much of a thought. If they do, it's still at the end of the day, this is a hobby game. I'm going to release it for free whenever I finish it, hopefully sooner rather than later, but my original goal was to release it in December. I didn't even get the prologue finished, let alone 3 chapters. I went 3 levels with 3 chapters, including this prologue. And this prologue is actually going to be also utilized in my 3rd chapter, I think. But yeah, you can just see here, I'm just adding a bunch of detail. And I realized whenever I started adding these things to the side of my landscape, you get a lot of detail and you can still honor the landscape and the design that you wanted, but I'm getting a lot of detail here for not a lot of work. These details, or these decals that I'm adding here, are something I learned just recently. I didn't realize how easy it was to add the decals. The one thing, and if anybody knows how to fix this, the one thing I'm struggling with is you have to turn off on your character mesh receiving decals, or else the decal blood is going to show up on your character as they walk over it. So it's actually interesting. So I don't know how to be able to have them receive decals in the future. Let's say I want some blood to splat. Oh, well, video's over. Sorry. Oh, I talked a lot longer than I anticipated. I apologize. But I want the blood to be able to splatter on somebody, but also have it be on the environment. So I don't know if there's a way to bake it into the environment. So if anybody knows the answer to that, let me know. I essentially wanted to show off my game with this video this week and show some of the progress on it. That was about 4 hours of environment design that I just fast forwarded 2,000%. So like 20 times speed. And so, yeah, I want to do that. I want to show that I'm trying to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but I also still want it to be good. So I had the opportunity to just have this really empty environment. And then I realized, you know what, I could spend a couple of hours here and just add a ton of detail, and it's going to extremely increase the hopefully the player playing it will extremely increase their player experience. So I'm going to stop rambling now. Hopefully you found this a little bit informative. This is just my approach. You know, I'm thinking about the 80-20 rule all the time. I'm going to keep thinking about these different principles that I'm using in my game design. Again, I've made games, if you've watched any of my former videos, I have made games for game jams, and I made a ton of games that I have not finished. So this is going to be one of the first games that I want to finish that is not part of a game jam. That's something that I'm determined on. So I'm trying to finish this prologue chapter as soon as possible, but every time that I set a deadline, I just completely miss it, right? I'm George R.R. Martin here, except that the quality probably isn't going to be as good as Winds of Winter. But like, he just keeps missing deadlines. I keep missing deadlines, and then I realize they're self-imposed deadlines. So I need to find a way to incentivize myself to stick to them. So yeah, I'm gonna go and stop rambling. Thanks for watching this video. If you made it to the end, I really appreciate it. Hopefully that means you found it somewhat enjoyable. I also like showing off that process. I think it's fun to watch the level design process. I was discovering the level as I was working on it, just because like I said, I'm learning along the way. So as I started, I had a bit of an idea of what I wanted it to look like, but those chains and stuff I added in the first part of the level were completely just something I came up with because they had the asset, and then I realized that they looked cool. So let me know what your approach is to level design. Let me know if any of these principles are things that you keep in mind, or maybe there's something that might be able to help you in the future. Again, my name is HipsterGW. This is Hipster Codes. I make videos every week on Unreal Engine, and I'm going to keep trying to add more specifically about this Souls-like game that I have. So have a good one. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.